as a functional chief marketing officer, CMO of a public company in healthcare. And this was, 10 plus years ago now. And I got really frustrated because right about then, these third-party review sites were coming online. Social media, of course, was permeating brands. We thought about brands. And guess what? My toolkit, right, and you talk to anybody in marketing today, they will tell you that they're feeling this. Some felt it sooner than others. My toolkit was not working. And what I mean by that is people were having, in our case, patients and customers were having really bad experiences with our people, our facilities, our technology. They're just having bad experiences. And what that meant was they now had the means by which to share that through a loudspeaker. And so what we think of as that's just how it is today, that was very new 10 plus years ago. And I realized, why am I and every other marketer out there, why are we telling the world how great our brands are, right, regardless of what the experience is really like? And it began to feel a little hollow and a little empty. And, you've heard this before, right? Marketing's kind of fluffy. I kind of started to feel that acutely. And I thought, what happens if I partner with my chief technology officer, my chief HR officer, head of facilities? What if we partner and I get out of my lane and realizing that I'm the one responsible for this brand? Why am I only promising things about the brand? Why don't I become more of a brand keeper, moving from brand promiser to brand keeper? And what I realized was until you get the experience exactly right, you are really just putting lipstick on a pig, right, to put it crudely. And so what we're going to do today is we're going to be talking about the ultimate starting point to create great experiences at work, to make people more joyful, more productive, and certainly more important than ever, given that we're all remote now for the time being, as engaged as possible. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start that story in this workshop. I'm going to start that story by talking about the big picture of what the outside brand typically is. I'm not going to spend too much time on that because many of you know what that is, but I'm going to start there and I'm going to be reverse engineering all the way down to the ultimate starting point, which you saw in the title of tonight's meetup, and that, of course, is intrinsic motivation. So if you'll permit me to kind of walk you through that, then we'll go through a modified version of the exercise we were going to do in person and then explain to you what that is, talking about design thinking and taking your questions. So I think you'll find it pretty interesting how much of this fits together and how so much of this is converging, right? People who are technologists, people who do culture change and change management, others who think really intently about just business processes. It's all converging in a really interesting way, the desire to create a great sustainable experience. Okay, so I left that role having created a very successful experience model, went into law. People thought I was crazy. They said, why would you go and want to herd cats like that at a law firm? I said, it's going to be more like herding tigers, right? And I was the first chief experience officer at professional service in law in the U.S. And then we started Cravity to help organizations learn how to do this for themselves. So what I want to do is I'm going to start with a question. And my question to you to kick things off is I want you to think about your last poor customer experience. Just take a moment. It might have been recently when you're ordering, something maybe online, maybe in a COVID-19 world where you were out and about. But think about that either as a consumer, maybe as your professional hat on, maybe a B2B experience. I want you to think about how it made you feel. And what I want you to do is I want you to go to chat and just really quickly, just give me I want you to tell me emotionally how it made you feel, right? So throw out some words, whatever that was. You don't have to tell us the experience, but how did it make you feel? Let's start with that. We can open up chat. Unhappy, crappy, frustrated, disrespected. That comes up a lot. Yep. Waste of time. Yep. Annoyed, incompetent. Okay. And so what's interesting is how quickly your answers came, right? That Maya Angelou once said that people often forget what you say to them. They'll sometimes forget what you do to them. To paraphrase her, she then said, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. This is the new F word in business and is operationalizing empathy, feeling, right? That you can create, and people are doing this very successfully now, a business strategy of how you make people feel. And operationalizing that is something we're talking about today. We're going to go to that starting point. And so it's interesting that your answers came so fast. You didn't really have to stop and think about it, right? You just visceral, like oh, and those words came out right away. And so as it turns out, this is Laura Brenkel, who used to work for me in that healthcare job up in Pennsylvania, Select Medical. She had this great quote about it, and it was this: happiness is transitory, pissed off is forever. And she was our social media manager. She saw this in real time, saw it all the time. And I remember hearing that and turning to her and saying, Laura, can I quote you on that? I promise I'll give you attribution forever. And of course, she said yes. So here at Cravity, what we do is we design human experiences, and we align that to brand and drivers of brand. We're not really a marketing agency. We're not really an HR consulting shop. We're not really just a technology firm. We converge all that together to align these things. And here's how we think of the brand experience, right? The notion, the summation of your belief of how a brand makes you feel, good or bad, okay? It's comprised of two very basic elements. One is the customer experience, right? What you experience as a customer, it's going to form every impression you have of that brand. What do we mean by that? Well, if you're not familiar with CX, it's way more than just customer service. Customer experience is the intentional connection of every single touch point that you have with the brand. What is that? A website. It's going to be how people interact with you, facilities, the user experience, right? If it's a technology app, for example, or even a website, the policies that they might have, how you were made to feel when you return something, for example, right? And on and on. Every single touch point. So you can enlarge that point of view. Think of that entire holistic summation of all of those things as a customer experience. And so the only way you're going to have a great customer experience, or actually to guarantee you have a poor one, is what the employee experience is like. This was my number one failure when I got out of that lane, as I described to you in that example at Select Medical. We right away went to customer experience, and we stopped there. We thought, wow, we need to clean our ceilings in our hospitals because our patients are looking up when they get out of the ambulance. And people are like, wow, that's a mind blower. Yeah, we need to clean our ceilings. And we need to work on what it's like to walk up to the front desk. And we need a journey map what it's like to take that journey from the parking lot to the front desk, and all these external facing things, right? And the bedside manner of our physicians, our nurses, and our therapists. Well, that's all fine and well, and those are pretty good ideas. Most people starting CX forget or don't realize that without a compelling employee experience, you'll never have a great customer experience. In our case, my failure was this. After about a year of all the change management methodology I could summon and try to master the best that I could and bringing in consultants and different people, really smart folks put together. Finally, our nurses, after about a year of this, we were kind of getting traction. It was one of those, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, or sometimes 1 step forward, 2 steps back, even worse. Our nurses finally raised their hand and said, you cheap SOBs, the scrubs you give us, they're so cheap. Like the brand you're so proud to display on our scrubs, the embroidery is like literally rubbing our chest raw every day. And so literally every day they had this visceral kind of irritant of the brand. And then as we looked at that with more intention, we started to realize that there were dozens upon dozens of other things we discovered where they were just really unhappy, or missed opportunities, or didn't feel like they had influence, or they had a voice, and all these things, right? That we realized, wow, our culture is like an operating system. And like any OS, it has to be maintained, it has to be upgraded, it has to be intentionally managed. It's a big aha moment. And it wasn't until we fixed the employee experience as a company of 42,000 people, $6 billion company, it wasn't until we got that right that we didn't start to see true strides in customer experience. So we put all that together for your brand experience. Here's to open things up, I want to share a really quick story of this gentleman, David Nealman. He founded JetBlue was so successful upon his exit, he, as part of his non-compete, he was asked to lead the United States market for 10 years. I took this photo. I'd ask you to raise your hand, but I can't see most of you. But if any of you have ever been or heard of like Qualtrics, they put on a great conference called X4 every year. I took this at last year's conference, and I loved how David Neeleman frames this. 3 powerful ways to delight customers. Look at the first one. The first one is training employees to act as ambassadors of the brand. The second, products and services as flawless as possible. And you can see the third one there, transforming problems into opportunities to please customers. I love that because right away you're talking about customers, and he goes to training employees to act as ambassadors of the brand. That's important because he's speaking to multiple audiences here. If you see their mission statement, for example, it's basically to make this the best job of my life for to create the best flight for our customers, right? Multiple audiences there. And obviously the approach works. When he left JetBlue, went to found Azul in 2008, he had the following on the left-hand side of the screen. That's what the routes look like for Azul in Brazil. And you can see 10 years later what happened. It works. And so that first emphasis on employees. And we're going to talk today and give you some concepts and some ideas of how you can apply this to your own world and your own practices. Okay, so let's first set some terms. So we've established that to create a great customer experience, right? Whether you're a Chewy or a Zappos or more famous ones, Disney, Ritz, they spend a lot of time with their culture and with employees and making sure they have great employee experiences. But that's different than employee engagement. So we throw this term around a lot. I'm sure many of you are familiar with it. But I want to give you a distinction between EX, employee experience, and employee engagement. Employee experience is that long-term redesign of the org that puts people at the center, right? So for those of you who've worked in UX, it's all about the user experience. This is very similar. These principles apply very much to the employee experience, where employees, much like all of us as consumers, think of the Amazon experience when Amazon gets to know you or makes suggestions. Other people like you purchase XYZ. You're probably ordering a lot from Amazon Prime these days, right? We're all stuck at the house. Employee experience takes those principles and puts that people-centered vision and view at the center of operations, of business decisions. That's different than employee engagement. Employee engagement is more short-term. It's also just focused on like perks and rewards, and it's also used very much as a noun versus a verb. Employee engagement is a decision. Employee engagement means someone has decided, I'm going to engage or not engage. Something about this place makes me want to give discretionary effort. In the world of customer experience, the holy grail of CX is discretionary effort, right? You can have the best processes, you can have the best technology, the best facilities, but it's the people that make that brand come alive. If they themselves aren't giving just a little bit extra, right, then you're never going to achieve that desired CX. Does that make sense? So again, EX, the definition I like of this, by the way, is it's the sum total of every touch point that employees have at the organization. That's, you notice what I did there? It's similar to the definition for customer experience. Remember, all the different touch points put together, just for employees. That's what I want you thinking about. Okay, so we have some definitions in place. And then the case for it is you can attract more talent, you can have more retention, you can drive that engagement, right? The great EX leads to employee engagement, productivity, and of course it's required for authentic employer branding. So what we typically do when we're in person for these workshops, we're telling Steve, we do these sometimes a light version of this for an hour, sometimes we'll go many days. These are photos of some work we did over a 2-day period. We were at Coca-Cola in Atlanta last year, and we sat down with their IT team, specifically the help desk leadership team, and some process improvement folks. And what we did was we said, okay, we spent 2 days journey mapping what their existing employee experience was like, and we did that through the identification of journeys. And so the first thing you do is let's pick the biggest pain point that you have. Let's pick the right subset of the overall employee journey. They happen to choose onboarding. Had a big issue with BYOD. It was bring your own device to work, right? It was out of control. New employees wanted all kinds of apps. They didn't want to use the prescribed kind of apps that they had at the enterprise level. Just a big problem. This is as impressive as their brand on the outside happens to be. It's arguably the most recognized brand in the world. Internally, they want to make sure it matched what the outside brand looked like. And so what I want you thinking about as we go through this is how in today's day and age, you only get one brand. Think about Samsung, for example, when they had the Galaxy 7 recall. I think it was a pretty minor detail, right? The phone exploded, I think, right? And if you recall when that happened, they didn't just suffer losing some market share. They actually experienced some difficulty in hiring talented software engineers, right? Because the external brand and the internal employer brand, it's all converged, all connected, okay? And so the case you see here with the Coca-Cola example, what we do is say, okay, so let's fix that on the inside. And what we do is we would identify a journey map of the current process of what is. Then you go back and you journey map what could be, right, the desired state. And that there's time, we'll even go a third round, which is, okay, what can we actually create, right? So it's got that true ideal state and then kind of more a realistic look. In this case, we did all three. And so we go through that process. And we go through all the steps, and we're going to talk about that here today, of what an employee is going through. And I'm going to give you some insight on how you actually do that if you want to try this for yourselves. And then we turn it into workflow, which for many of you get some very serious practitioners I know of lean and agile methodology. This part will feel more familiar, right? Turn it into workflow. Okay, to enable the right solutions. Okay, so if we were in the room together, we're going to start to ask you some questions. What we would do is we'd say, okay, let's first talk about the mindset that's needed to journey map an experience. And the first thing is like that phrase we've heard, since we were kids, all of us, I'm sure, which is, try walking a mile in someone else's shoes. Okay, that's what I want you to be thinking about if you go into to journey mapping. Step into someone else's shoes. See the experience from their point of view. You want to first actually pretend that you don't know anything about the organization. That's really important, and that's actually harder than it sounds, right? Because what often happens is, oh, well, you can't do that because compliance needs this and this to happen, or, oh, we've done this way for years. I've got to go to this room first, so they got to fill out this paperwork first, if we were choosing an onboarding experience as an example. That is definitely not the way to do it. You want to make sure that you're designing from a human-centric standpoint, right? Remember the F word in business now? It's feeling. What's the desired feeling you want the person that you're trying to affect and the actions you want them to take? What do you want them to feel? That's really important. People make decisions based on emotion, actually. We're pretty irrational creatures at the end of the day. So I want you thinking about this persona. We have a lot of different personas. Today we chose one called Jose. He's a young guy in his early 30s. He is approaching the job for day one. And we're going to create the good experience for him, we need to be thinking about day zero, what happens before he takes that job, where he accepts that job offer, and the first day, right? Day one. And Jose, remember, again, I want you to pretend like you don't know much about your own organizations. A little bit about Jose. Let's meet him. So I'm at this company. It's Agile Coaching DC Inc. Hopefully that's not a real business. Like Steve, I probably should have checked. We made that up. And so Jose, right, so he's from BC, he's a sales exec. There's a lot on the screen to take in. I don't expect you to read it all. But what we do, right, over longer like in-person workshops, we would go through, get familiar with Jose's story. We'd understand his pain points. You can derive a lot of information about this. We've not used personas. They are typical devices that are used that come somewhat out of the world of marketing. We apply it to much of this. And it's really just to You can't map journeys for every single person, though you can, as it turns out later on, you're going to learn you can personalize experiences for people. That's the grand finale, and I don't want to give that away too soon here. But to start off, you want to get to know Jose a little bit, his key traits, achiever, he's a curious person, he's a great communicator. Okay, so we want to pretend that we were in a room together, how this would work. How would we design a onboarding experience, let's say, for someone like Jose? Well, there's a lot of information here, but it's a little incomplete. But we're going to go with that, and I'm going to fill in the rest of the story here as we go on. What are we going to do with this info? Well, the first thing is we're going to choose which stage of the employee journey to focus on, right? So most people start with day one. Oh, well, we need to start paying attention to this. Some more savvy organizations, when they come on board, they get really intentional about it, make sure they feel the right things, get excited, and then we'll make sure they're engaged, and as they start to make transformative change across your organization, and then finally when they leave and they exit. The thinking on this is that you have alumni, and you need to make sure that the exit is actually a great experience as well, because of the number of people that come back to the same organization, and even when they don't, they talk. And remember, you only get one reputation. So the most innovative organizations are putting all this together. And yet, day zero is often not thought of as intentionally as it should be. This is the first point of contact that a candidate has with the organization, all the way up to the moment that they walk in, or virtually now, do a virtual onboarding, day zero. So once you're thinking about Jose, I know there's a lot of information on him, so I didn't expect you to read all of that. But if you're in the room together, you'd be studying, we'd be in small groups, you'd be studying Jose's background, and we would then give you a formula, which we're going to do now, to design an experience for Jose. And you could choose. We could say, hey, Ed, we're brother trainers, we want to focus on one of these stages, right? So for today, what we're going to do is we're going to go through what's involved with journey mapping for day zero and for day one. I chose both. I'll move that out of the way. Okay. So the first thing you need to be thinking about is what the employee, in this case Jose, what he's thinking, what he's doing, what his needs and expectations are at each step of the journey. And I didn't mean to go there. Hold on a second. Oh, you don't like that. No. There we go. Okay. User error, folks. Thing just popped up on me. Okay. And then what you're thinking about is we would take stickies and you would work in small groups, and you would actually, okay, so what does Jose need to be thinking and feeling before he accepts a job offer, right? What are the kinds of things that he's doing? Is he waiting around to hear where he is in the process? Is he proactively getting a hold of us? What are his needs and expectations, right? Day zero. And what business opportunities do we have? So this starts to get those creative juices going on the business opportunity side. Oh, so what's the dropout rate, for example, of candidates to get to the job offer stage, right? We've heard from one very large employer recently that we're going to start working with. They're losing an amazing 70%. This is hundreds of thousands of people of their candidates before they even get to the job offer stage. It's extremely expensive for them, right? So they're going to get way more intentional about proactively communicating with them, sending notifications out to them to keep them excited and engaged. We're going to create almost like a Domino's pizza tracker, right? So they know where they are in the process. We have that need, right? So again, this kinds of methodologies can start to unlock those kinds of business opportunities. And then you'd be thinking about the on-stage people and things, and the off-stage things that are going on, right? So on-stage would be the things, much like it sounds, right in front of Jose, versus all the off-stage things that have to happen for day zero to get him to feel the right things, to do the actions that you need and to meet your needs and expectations, et cetera, and the technology and data that are thought of. And so we would be separated into small groups. You would then, if you're choosing both day 0 and day 1, mapping all of that out. And day 1, I find is actually easier for people to start because we all remember what day 1 looks like. You remember, think of like your first day on a job if you've recently switched positions or if you go back, I don't know, many, many years. Certainly you can remember at least some of your first day, right? And, you're typically a little anxious, you may be excited, maybe you're nervous. So be thinking about, if you're designing this for Jose, what would he need to be, what would he be thinking and feeling? What do you want him to think and feel on that first day? And what is he doing? What does it actually look like, right? So you're going to be going through that, and in a small group setting, this comes together typically very quickly, right? And a lot of the ideas start to flow on this. Okay, so what I want you to do is go to chat, and I'm going to ask you a couple questions about this. And what I want to ask you first is, for day 0, what do you think is the biggest missed opportunity for day 0 when it comes to what your candidates, top talent, let's say, if you're in a really competitive vertical, what do you think is the biggest missed opportunity or biggest even pain point for day 0 that you've seen? And let's take a look at some of those answers. Constant contact, okay? So they get disconnected, yep. Not having their space set up, desk. Oh, we see this all the time. You show up. Oh, how do you think that makes an employee feel? Oh, your laptop isn't ready. Really sorry. Your email? Oh, it's going to be 3 more days. How do you think that makes them feel? Deflated. They didn't know I was coming? Employees are now thinking like consumers. They want the same experience. If I know you as a brand, you better know me. They say that Hilton spent 5 years reducing the number of keystrokes for their repeat customers coming up to the front desk to check in from more than 100 to 4, right? How frustrating is it when you stay at a hotel over and over and over again and ask you the same questions over and over and over again, right? I know you, I expect you to know me. No real contact, not being connected to the right people, so again, that lack of intention. Not explaining clearly the mission, values, and vision of the organization. Yeah, if you don't have that sense of purpose, that's certainly a lost opportunity. My rule, treat onboarding for a new employee like a first date. Make it a memorable experience, okay? Describe the culture and purpose of the org. Training and support and peer team building was a missed opportunity. It's pretty good. Okay, so that's a couple more messages here. That's kind of for day 0, right before. And some of you kind of went to the onboarding examples. That's okay. People involved are busy. Yeah. Again, lack of intention. Oh, man, oh. And that feeling, or haven't you seen it? It's terrible. Where you have a supervisor like, oh, I got to give a tour. I got somebody new coming. I got to stop what I'm doing. Versus realizing, no, that's a critical part of the job to maintain the brand experience and deliver a great employee experience. Sends all the wrong signals to someone like that. Okay. So I have a same question for day 1. So now I want you fully thinking about onboarding. So some of you already went there, but what are you seeing, right, as the biggest missed opportunity for day 1? Maybe we'll get to some of the same, something maybe that hasn't been shared yet. Biggest missed opportunity for day 1. And look at the chart here, right? What they could be doing, what they could be thinking and feeling, a business opportunity, use of technology perhaps. Not setting up a buddy or go-to person with random questions. Yep. Waiting in the lobby, not sure who is picking you up. Oh, just lack of intention, just crazy. Lack of preparation, manager is late, positive energy, not having access into the building. Wow. The smallest things, these gestures, they mean so much. If you create a genuinely human experience, you would never let that happen. There's a great book by my friend Gene Bliss, and it's called simply, Would You Do That to Your Mother? I mean, real simple. right? We were taught much of this in kindergarten. Make the new hire feel the team, have a welcome gathering, feedback from other coworkers and their experiences. Sometimes you get fire hosed with too much information. Yeah, the old 3-ring policy like binders, right? Just lands with a dull thud. It's like I call it the cheesecake menu. Just keep going and going and going, right? It's overload. You get your badge during certain hours until you get your badge entrance. Oh, I gotta go back up for that. Second. Until you get your badge opportunity is our loss. I'm paraphrasing that one. Go back down, sorry. Oh, someone has to escort you around and you get locked out. Yep, we've all seen that happen. Bad directions, not having the mentorship, lunch for the team all week, it's a great idea. Understanding the purpose and mission, we heard that earlier, and ditto certainly there. Team orientation, welcome package. Imagine instead, you apply some of this methodology, apply this intention. That's such an important word we use a lot in designing, right? How different it could be, and by the way, it is for the companies that do it really, really well, right? Trader Joe's does such a good job with this. They have employee blogs, customer blogs, about how great they are. It just is that intention. Disney says that they attribute their consistently great results because they treat things with intention that their competitors leave unintentional, right? That is what the difference really, really is. Desk and cube is dirty. Yeah, that's never good. Like, oh, we forgot to clean it. Good luck. When I was the CXO at Miles and Stockbridge, a regional law firm based in Maryland, we applied this methodology to not just employees, but also to our clients. And I want to give you an example of the level of intention that's possible and how it makes people feel. We mapped the entire journey of both our clients' experiences with us and our employees. And to switch to clients, we knew that someone traveling in to see us, they had a lot of corporate clients from out of the market. Clearly, travel makes us tired. And so this process we're looking at here, we use this to apply to that, to say, okay, so what are they thinking and feeling? What are they doing? What are their needs and expectations? Well, what we did was we matched the whole experience so that we said, okay, so if we're picking them up at the train station or at Reagan or BWI, we hired a car service. We gave them branded bottled water and trained them on how to interact with their clients. So it started the moment that they, actually beforehand, even though we would be a concierge-like service, so we would set these up to make arrangements. Client shows up, they get in the car, hand them the bottled water. They get to the hotel. We had a partnership with the Renaissance Hotel and the Madison Hotel in DC. They had little postcards that we left in the room and simply said, welcome to DC, or welcome to Baltimore. You'd flip it around and would say, here's a map to our office, here's a number to call us, here's our email if you need anything at all. And then we'd have like a amenity basket. The postcard cost us 5 cents. Amenity basket, $20, $25. It's a level of intention. Show up in the office. We inspired by Nordstrom's. If you've ever shopped there, when you purchase something at Nordstrom's, they never do what when you purchase something at the counter. They never just hand you the bag. What do? They don't want to put that in chat? At Nordstrom's, they're trained to walk around. They do mention your name, that's true. They walk around, they register, and they hand you. That's right, walk around the counter and hand it to you, okay? So inspired by that, this is about anticipating needs and also exceeding expectations. We changed the receptionist's name, the title, to client concierge, suddenly giving them permission to think of their jobs differently and empowering them. And so the client would come in, they've already been well taken care of, these little gestures, they walk in. We had music, classical music. I'd constantly fight with them on whether yacht rock was actually acceptable in the circumstances. And so we'd have the client concierge stand up, walk around the desk, look them in the eye, greet them, hi, Ms. Smith, we're so glad you're here. We noticed last time you were here, you had this brand of tea or coffee, whatever. Would you like some of that again? And we've called your lawyer. And then we had charging stations, anticipating the need then to plug in, right? Et cetera, et cetera. It went on and on and on. And the idea in that setting was We want the client thinking, if this place pays that much attention to these little things, chances are with the big things I hired them for, they got it covered, right? Because our clients can say, I can hire a great law firm anywhere. I mean, I expect great results. That's table stakes. Give me a great experience, and I'll give them my maximum spend. And the only reason that work became alive is because we did the same thing for our employees, showing up to onboard, little table tents, journey mapping the whole experience as you walk in, visit from the CEO, got too busy, a video, just carefully thinking that through. Okay, so you get the gist of that. Okay, so great suggestion here on chat. A good book for folks to read on behavior and UX, Powerful Moments. It's a great suggestion. Thank you for that. Okay, so what if I told you that there was a decoder ring that we could use to create an even more compelling experience? This is going to tie back to the SAFE framework and one of those key principles. In fact, it's number 8. Steve, I'm going to ask you to describe that to us in a second. I'm going to get to that slide. And what if I told you that because so much attention has been paid to what I'm going to describe here in a moment, and yet until recently we didn't actually know what to do about it. We just knew it was important because there's books written about it, there's lots of videos about it. What am I talking about? Talking about intrinsic motivation. What if you could personalize the experience even further? Remember I told you the expectation now is if I know you as a brand or as a business, I expect you to know me. Well, that's even more true with the new generations of talent that's coming up. Even more true. And so the companies that are going to be the most successful, I think, at keeping and attracting talent are going to understand you've got to personalize all of this. So what do I mean when I say talk about intrinsic motivation? Well, let's give you some quick definitions and we'll go through the next piece of this. So we talk about motivation first in definitions. There's 2 types of motivation. There's extrinsic motivation and there's intrinsic motivation. Extrinsic are not really consistent. These are things like people can game the system with extrinsic motivators. For example, compensation, discretionary income. Sorry, that's not right. Compensation, discretionary bonuses, right? Perks. These are things that are often treated like one size fits all. These extrinsic motivators, they don't last. People come to expect it. Sometimes, how many times have you seen someone just expect like a merit bonus, right? No, there's a merit, they miss the merit part of that, right? And so think of someone who gets up early in the morning to go to work because they're going to have a penalty that they might get written up or the boss will be upset, right? That's an extrinsic motivator. Intrinsic is what makes up our DNA, our personalities, who we really are. These are things that consistently and constantly work because they're inherent inside of you. It's you getting up in the morning to go to work an hour early because you're passionate about a project that you're working on. You're getting something you need. You're intrinsically motivated. This is a very powerful driver of behavior. In fact, it is the driver of behavior. And so you think about what you do in the Agile world, I want you thinking about the SAFE principles. If you're new to the group, you may not know this. I'm sure most of you really do. Steve, do you want to say a few words about the SAFE principles before I go on? Steve, you there?
You went back on mute.
Might be on mute. Steve, I think you're on mute. Drive by Daniel Pink while we're waiting. Absolutely right. Go ahead. Steve, is that you?
I came off mute. Sorry about that. No, for years we've been trying to figure out how to measure it, and we had no idea how to do it. So it was really frustrating. So we would talk about it, and we would talk about ways that we could do it. And we also talked about decentralizing decision-making, and we would try to do that with unmotivated people. And all of these things were just very, very frustrating. And this is why I asked Ed to come here and why I was so excited when I was actually having coffee with my friend Greg, and he was talking about his new adventure. I was like, wait. As soon as he said the intrinsic motivation, I was like, wait. Here's here's the problem. And I showed him the SAFE principles, and I said, hey, I just did a talk at the SAFE Summit recently, and this is how it all wraps up. This is what we've been looking for. Anyway, I will stop with that, but here's an opportunity. Thanks, guys.
Thank you for that, Steve. Did you think about like how you were implementing the principles, or if you're hearing about this for the first time, hopefully we've made the case to you that intrinsic motivation really is the ultimate starting point for so much of behavior change, creating these great experiences. Let me explain what I mean. Go back to that example, the formula I gave you at the top, where we said, remember, BX, brand experience, equals the sum total of employee experience plus customer experience. Remember that? Well, if you reverse engineer the brand experience, the sum total of those things, just keep reverse engineering. Keep going back down to the individual. Just keep walking backwards. So some people think the starting point is employee engagement. Well, employee engagement is actually kind of the middle of the story. It's a verb. It's not a noun. People have already made the decision to engage or not to engage, right? There's lots and lots of data on employee engagement. It's not terribly actionable, meaning it's binary. Someone has decided I'm engaged or I'm not engaged. And there's lots of follow-up questions, right, to try to understand why that is. So it's somewhat actionable, but not as actionable as it could be. Why? Because you're measuring the middle of the story. If you think of the end of the story as the KPIs, people-based KPIs, right? The outcomes and the results that you want. Think of the middle of the story as employee engagement scores. Some of it's kind of faulty. There's a question on there, the Gallup Q12, one of the most famous employee engagement surveys asked, and it's, do you have a best friend at work? Sorry, but like, that's going to get you laughed out of most CFO offices, and it kind of should. Like, do we want friendly people at work? Do you want to make friends? Of course you do. There's very little you could do with that data, right? And so I think the field is maturing a little bit to understand there's a place to measure employee engagement, but it's the middle of the story. What we're talking about here with intrinsic motivation is moving to the beginning of the story. What drives behavior? And let's go back to journey mapping. Steve, do you want to see something with the Agile Manifesto? And then I'm going to tie this all together.
Actually, I think you can just go ahead and tie it all together at this point. So let's just go.
Okay. So through Motivator Insights, so this is an assessment that's developed at Villanova University and GW University here in town. So PhDs, organizational psychology, who started to look at all the research behind intrinsic motivation and started to do some beta testing. And what they found was they narrowed down basic intrinsic motivators to 10 dimensions. It turns out there are 10 basic intrinsic motivators. There are things like learning, influence, collaboration, values, recognition. Think of the person that you work with, or maybe it's you, I don't know. There's nothing wrong with any of this, just how we are, who just wants the attaboy. Just want to be recognized, right? Don't think of someone who doesn't really give a flip about that. When you start to unpack a lot of this and understand that the one-size-fits-all approach is just that you'll never personalize an experience if you don't understand. I said at the top of this segment, you could get a decoder ring. That's what this represents. And so this is the kind of data where, to go back to the journey mapping, remember our persona of Jose? If instead of that background on Jose of his likes, where he went to school, what he does, it's something useful, right? The persona. Instead, if we could understand what motivated him, what his unique mix of the 10 motivators are, imagine what would be possible, right? Intrinsic motivation, someone mentioned the book Drive. There's a lot of great videos on this. Most people understand, most people that follow this understand the importance of intrinsic motivation, but they don't know what to do about it. They just read a lot about it or watch media. And so it's largely been untapped. And that's what's so exciting about what's happening in the field, is these motivators drive behavior. And so what's going to happen is there are these gaps that we're uncovering in our workplace. And the gap is between what intrinsically motivates someone, right? So you can get a score on someone who is intrinsically motivated, let's say, by learning. They're craving that next opportunity to go to professional development conference, or these days, webinar, right? And they're not getting it. And so imagine you had data on that versus the next person over. What they want autonomy. Man, leave me alone. Let me do my job, right? The gap is between what inherently motivates them and what they're actually experiencing at work. And so what's happening is there's a dawning, let's say, a realization of this being the ultimate starting point that can be threaded all the way through to the brand experience you want to create, right? Again, reverse engineer all of that. Remember I said about discretionary effort and unlocking that. You can have a much better chance of doing that if you actually understand what makes someone get up early, make someone give that discretionary effort at work. And so employee engagement score has been flat for a long, long time for a reason. We're just measuring the wrong things, or at least the middle of the story. So here's Jose. He's so excited about his first day, right? Think about your first day on the job, right? Imagine if your employer knew what intrinsically motivated you, if they had that decoder ring. In this case for Jose, right? Here are the 10 motivators discovered through that research that I mentioned, the motivator insights. And so now imagine if we were together and we're going to do another quick exercise here. We're going to now design an experience or a micro journey for Jose, because I'm going to tell you what motivates him intrinsically. So in Jose's case, what's going to motivate him to engage, to get to that middle of the story? Learning, collaborating. He loves to work with people. He loves it. And rationality, right? Just give me the facts. Explain to me why we're doing what we're doing. But that's what makes this guy tick, okay? So if you go back to the exercise that I was describing on the front end, what kind of experiences could we create if we knew that he loved to learn? He loved to collaborate. He loved just to have things explained to him. He's a very rational kind of person. And so because of the modalities today, we can't break off into small groups and actually do that. But I want to ask you a question now. Let's go to chat again. And if we were to pick, let's just go with onboarding. So easiest one to start with. With onboarding, what would the missed opportunity then look like for Jose if you knew he was motivated by learning, collaboration, and rationality? Let's look at some examples. Opinion being respected is missing an intrinsic top 10. So influence is where that, you're absolutely right. If you didn't see it, one of the research was about 18,000 hours, about 3 years, if I understand it, and they uncovered the exact same thing, and it was influence. Really, really, really important. Okay, so someone said, just read the new hire manual, not meeting his teammates because he likes to collaborate, right? A list of online or in-house training the company sponsors. Look, Beverly, that is a great one. If you had that data, you knew Jose is coming to the organization, that excitement in that photo, so I picked that photo, right? So excited, it's your first job, you can't wait. You want to make sure that excitement doesn't just taper off after the first 90 days. You want to keep that level of engagement up. And you're only going to do that if you know what makes someone tick. And so meet that need. List of online in-house training the company sponsors. How much money would that cost? Let's go with 0 or next to 0 to do that. It's about intention. Give him some practical training for an hour, followed by the opportunity to collaborate to solve a problem with his new team. Trish, that's great. That's absolutely right. Not asking him beforehand. Louise, go ahead and give us some more detail on what you mean there. How are you finding his top 3 needs? So Karen, great question. So what they came up with was an assessment of 44 questions. 22 questions measures the intrinsic motivators, right? You ask that one time at your baseline. The next set of questions measures what he's experiencing at work. And because in the context of a new employee, the assessment would actually ask Jose in this case to talk about what he was not getting at his previous place of employment in that example. Motivator Insights is often used with existing employees. I know we're talking about onboarding today as a journey. The existing employees, you're going to get lots of actionable data out of that because they're going to tell you, here's what I'm not getting at work. And that leads to lack of maximum productivity. It does affect retention, and of course, lack of engagement. Okay, Tricia says, tell his team, hey, this guy coming in, he's motivated by learning. Ask each one of them what they want to teach him in his first week and, quote, learn from him. That is a great example. Louise writes, not asking Jose what motivates him. Yeah, the assessment was written in a way so that it takes like 6 minutes. You're not coming right out to ask that question, right? It's more kind of getting behind those drivers. Karen, invite him to, or no, I'm sorry, not Karen. Invite him to discussions of a project he'll be in so he feels involved. Sure, yeah, for collaboration. Absolutely right. Karen's writing, can you share the questionnaire and assessment? Yes, we can do that. You can absolutely send that out. Not asking Jose what was exciting for him in his past projects. Yeah, missed opportunity there. Super. That is great. So again, be thinking about these different things and how it can be applied. If we were together, we would, in the room, we would design that journey together. I'd let you kind of choose that. And it's so exciting because look what happened here. The exercise, if you will, was 3-4 minutes each, and ideas come very, very quickly. With this, again, it's about intention and applying actionable data. Otherwise, why are you capturing it? I can't tell you how many times people are demotivated when they get employee engagement surveys. And they think every year, they think to themselves, you maybe thought of this yourself. Here we go again. Nothing's going to change around here. Why bother? Actually, it hurts. So McKinsey tells us, look, employees who are intrinsically motivated, they are 32% more committed to the job. They have a 46% higher job satisfaction, and they perform at a higher or better than other employees. Another study from Cho and Perry showed intrinsic motivation has 3 times the impact on employee engagement levels than extrinsic motivation, right? If you think about someone earning, I don't know, a free trip to Mexico or TVs or whatever, hitting like a goal or something, yeah, people like that, but that doesn't really change behavior over the long term. And that's the difference between extrinsic and intrinsic motivation. Someone else write stagnant salary and or no advancement. Yeah, those are all, Sandra, those are good examples of extrinsic motivators. And, you got to make sure you pay attention to that too. But if you're not looking at the intrinsic part of it, you're missing the majority of what drives behavior. That's I think, the key point here. So now what I want to do is kind of come to our Q&A and finish with this. It's clear that, we've been doing a lot of thinking about this here at Cravity, as I'm sure you have. We're in this new reality. We don't know when this current situation really is going to subside. Working remotely is, for many people, just uncharted territory. And so we would argue, as you think about how to harness the power of knowledge workers through intrinsic motivation, that when people are battling isolation maybe, or they're going to start to, it just drags on week after week, when people are off site, it's our take, for what it's worth, and what we're seeing anyway, that the initial scramble of employers was about logistics. How's this going to work remotely? What systems are we going to use? What does secure access look like? All those needed things, right, at first. And then the shock of what we all went through kind of wears off, and the next wave is about to occur, and that is, or to crest rather, and it's really much more about, so, okay, we got that solved on the logistics side, but I can't see my people. How are that, make sure that they stay engaged, that they stay productive? And so we feel like intrinsic motivation just becomes even more important nowadays. So with that, I want to stop and take some questions you might have. Steve, I'm happy to let you moderate this part if you'd like. We can do it together. I would say if you feel like if you have interest in how to what data analytics on this really looks like and about intrinsic motivation, certainly reach out. We'd be happy to set up a walkthrough and let you kind of access that. We are actually doing that at no cost as a way to help businesses, and we're doing that for an extended period of time. So you can get details on the front page of creativity.com. So it's not so much of a business opportunity for us as much as something we feel like it could really, really help folks. And again, we're doing that at no charge. Okay. Hey, Steve, do you, I was going to go to Q&A. Feel free to, I know you got people muted, but if you want to do that through Zoom chat, that's up to you. But happy to take questions from folks on what you've heard today and use our remaining time wherever you'd like.
Hey, does anybody have any questions? I guess people can come off mute. I didn't force people, I put people on mute just when they come on. However, I believe everybody can come off of mute at this point and ask a question if you would like. And I have taken this, I have gone through it. And Ed, will you post your email so everybody can send you a note if they have follow-up questions for you?
Sure. You're happy to do that.
Ed, excuse me, it's Luis here. I just wanted your thought on Daniel Pink talk about purpose. I think autonomy, purpose, and then mastery as intrinsic motivation. What are your thoughts on that? Because you talk about the 10 dimension. I just want you to have you. I just want you to hear your thought on that.
On the motivators themselves, how they were derived, or repeat your question. I'm so sorry.
Exactly. How does that drive us intrinsic motivation? The 3 dimension: mastery, autonomy, and purpose.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're going back to Dan Pink's work.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
Mastery, autonomy, purpose. Yep. No, I think that work stands, right? What we find though is just uncovering what the motivators are is the right starting point, right? And aligning that to where the culture needs to go, where the business needs to go, would be the next step past that. So that's where the purpose would come in. And then of course the satisfaction you get right from mastery of like a given field. What we're seeing in the marketplace is just get the data on what intrinsically motivates someone, and then through be it journey mapping or some other modality, you can then extend and enable solutions to that. That could be culture change, it could be technology. There's a lot going on in the digital workspace, for example. We could take this data and personalize a experience on your phone, how you do your work, right? Through a lot of mobile technology, but personalize it because you can deliver notifications very differently. You can enable new features. You can enable the ability to find new apps in your enterprise versus other apps that other people wouldn't care about. Why? Because now I have the decoder ring what motivates you. So again, you can take it in so many different directions. That's I think what's exciting about it.
Yeah, and if I may, what I love about it is when we focus on purpose, everybody has a different purpose. So if my company focuses and puts me in a position to where, hey, I can deliver products faster, that's great, or I can get more done, that's great. But what I really like to do, my purpose, my motivation, is to help ensure that people get to go home on time, that people have better lives. That's why I do what I do. I like improving people's lives. As an Agile coach, I can do that. And that's the purpose I want to find. So, so if the company finds a different purpose for me, it's not going to work nearly as well as putting me in a situation where I can collaborate with others and make people's lives better. So that's going to be my purpose. And if they align the wrong purpose for me, it's just not going to work as well.
Yeah. Steve, it's a great point, because look, you can't stop at this. In other words, someone asked in the chat to show the 10 motivators. I put that back up, but this is the starting point. It's not the be all end all, and certainly not the ending point. In other words, to your point about purpose, Steve, if you have the data on motivate your people, and you're going to have the data across the enterprise, you're going to have it by division, you're going to have it by individual, right? If you have the data, you then have to align that with purpose, right? So you can have, it's great to have intrinsically motivated people, but if they're not aligned to where you're going with your North Star, then that's another missed opportunity. You got to connect it all, is the point.
Right. Sandra, did you have a question? I think you came off of mute.
Yes, I did. I work with people who.
Oh, Sandra, I think you might want to take a step closer to your microphone.
Okay.
Thank
I work
you.
with people whose intrinsic motivation is that they have to, support the family, and the management seems to see them as basically worth a dime a dozen. So any of the slightest infraction could cost them a job, and their only interest in being there is that they need a job to support their family. So how do these intrinsic motivations map to the needs of people in that kind of environment, that kind of culture, whereas basically they're just there to survive?
But say the last part where basically they're just
there to survive, take care
oh
of
yeah.
and,
Sure.
I mean, the pay isn't that great. The
Sure.
respect is pretty much non-existent, and really they just need to be able to keep a roof over their head, food in their family,
Sure.
clothes in their back, that kind of thing.
Sure, no question. Listen, you're talking about extrinsic motivators, right? And that you have to have your basic needs met, right? Intrinsic motivation is going to be most effective clearly once those basic needs are met, right? So think the extrinsic motivators, having a roof over your head. There's a study done maybe 10 years ago. They talked about how everyone has like a number, right, of what the basic needs to meet your basic needs, and there's a point of diminishing return after that. And the numbers I recall was much lower than most people thought, right? That past that, you don't derive that much more satisfaction, right? But the point is, you have to have your basic needs met, no question. This is about, this does assume that that's the case, that you have your basic needs met, because if your basic needs met, that's not necessarily going to make you engage at work. It could, but this is intrinsic. This is part of you. It's what makes you tick, right? If your basic needs met, and you are someone whose values is really important to you, and you're getting that from your workplace, right? You're going to be engaged. You're going to be productive. You're going to want to stick around.
Yeah, Maslow's law still applies. I mean, you do have to have a roof over your head and food in your belly and be able to feed your family. But then after that, once we start achieving that, then how do you keep people motivated beyond that? And that's always a challenge. So yes, so Sandra, to your point, people do have to have the basic needs met. But once that takes place, then what's the next step?
I'd like to add something that might be useful to Sandra. I owned a company in which I couldn't pay people the amount that they could make elsewhere because the company was still growing in the early days. And there were a lot of employees in those early days that just needed a job to support their family, and they were willing to do creative things to have that job. And what I discovered in that 2.5-year period, Sandra, is that when people seem to only be motivated by keeping their job, they do still have an intrinsic motivation. Their intrinsic motivation is their family. It's an emotional need. They also have a motivation to be safe and secure. Mm-hmm. So the way we negotiate, we talked about recruiting very briefly, but the way we negotiate with those people when they're first hired is critical. So they may want flexibility around their schedule because of childcare issues, or they may really value their autonomy because they want to be able to make family decisions. And if you miss that, if you forget that, then you end up in an eternal struggle with that employee. But if you listen to it, really listen to it, give it respect, and negotiate with them so that they can get what they need from day one, my experience was that they became some of the most loyal early employees because they cannot get that safety and that security around those key logistic factors from any other employer, because most employers don't bother negotiating on those factors. So for what it's worth, you know, that's helpful to you.
Thank you, Tricia.
Yeah, this is Bob Abt. I'd like to offer something up here that we tried to instill within our ExxonMobil IT organization, and that was a sense of an ecosystem. We were implementing SAFE, so you had your team level, you had your program level, and you had your portfolio level. But the entire thing was around an ecosystem. And it's not only feeling the purpose of being part of an ecosystem, it's the accountability of helping the ecosystem thrive, understanding the purpose of the entire portfolio program team and how you fed into that, and making sure that you were motivated by the purpose of that ecosystem, but also understanding you are accountable for the safety and the health of that ecosystem. And information sharing from top to bottom and bottom to top was very important, and making sure that it wasn't a manager employee. It was more being part of something bigger than just yourself, and feeling empowered to make decisions, but based on the fact that you understood the purpose of the ecosystem in general.
Great.
Thank you, Bob.
That's great insight. Yeah.
For jumping in. Do we have, I'd love to get to a retrospective, and again, we have Menti to jump into that. Do we have any more questions? We probably have time for one more question. Okay. Let's see. Ed, you're sharing something on the screen here. What do we got?
Well, just to let everybody know, if anyone wants to try this, if they'll reach out to us. Again, we're doing it no charge because of what's going on right now with the remote workforce, but we've added a few questions where we're actually going to assess what percentage of people are working remotely when they started. And then we do all kinds of correlations based on their motivators and their status, the percentage of time working remotely. So it gets really, really interesting. And if I can help anyone in any way, just let us know. And there's also, by the way, some white papers on here as well if you want to learn more about the power of intrinsic motivation. It's good, like at least a couple dozen on there. So yeah, so it makes you aware of that resource.
Yeah, Ed, is the link to the video still on the homepage? Because there's a great YouTube video that sums this up in a couple of minutes. It's a real good way to pass the information along to others. Okay, there it is. It's down here. So it's a quick little video. It's definitely worth going through. And if someone wants to try this, do they go to the website or should they reach out to you, Ed?
Yeah, you can go to the website, fill out the form there to get things in motion. If you have my email address, feel free to reach out to me directly, and we'll do the same there. So either is fine. Okay. Yeah, you're right. The video is a good one. That's a quick 2-minute introduction of this.
Yep, I really like this video, so you can go to cravity.com and check it out. Really enjoyed the video. It's a great way to communicate this very quickly. And you can go there, and I recommend you go to the website, fill it out, and take the motivator insight. You'll get some feedback, and that will help go forward with that. Thank you very much. How did you guys think Ed did? Does he deserve a round of applause? You got to come off. You got to come off mute for a minute there. If you're gonna give him a round of applause. Okay. All right. I see Leslie and Jose clapping.
Thanks, Ed.
But we know the feelings are there. Thank you, guys. Now, if we may, I'm going to go back and share my screen for a minute and go back to my intrinsic. Now, if I can pull it up, there we go. Can you guys see that?
No.
Can you see Menti?
Not yet.
How come we can't see Menti? All right, we're just going to go share my screen and we're going to go. All right, we're going to try this one more time. There we go. Can you see Menti again?
Yeah.
All right. So if you go to menti.com and you type in 491175, and you can do this on your phone, please do me a favor and type in on the first question you get. You can type in full-fledged comments. And on the second one, we can create a little word cloud. And in the word cloud, you can type in information and just, type in a word or two of how you are feeling about it, of how you felt about this. And this will help. This will be our retrospective. Hey, there we go. We're getting some good feedback. Thank you, guys. Very helpful, essential. All feedback is welcome. And on this, you can go to the second page and you can type in final words just for a word cloud, and we'll send this off to Ed. And most of you know how to reach out to me. Please reach out to me and send me your comments. And we were trying to do this. This was our first fully virtual one outside of a small lean coffee that we've done. So I hope it went well. Dying to feedback on how we can improve. Our meetups, because we're always trying. And Trisha and I were still working very closely together. Thank you so much, Trisha. Thank you so much, Ed. I greatly appreciate it.
Happy to do it. Thanks, everyone. Stay safe. Great job, Steve.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brooke. And I'm going to leave this up, but I'm going to go, if it's not raining, I'm going to go play soccer with my son, Max, because he wants me to play soccer with him every night. And it's been a long day since I've been doing training all day. Anyway, thank you all very much. And I look forward to seeing you guys again soon.
Thank you. See you. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye.